Imagine a world without bridges. Roads suddenly stop, journeys become impossible, and everything just feels disconnected. In music, that's exactly what happens when you don't use suspended or sus chords. They're like the bridges of your songs, connecting different sections, creating movement and keeping the music flowing. But here's the thing, while sus chords are used in so many genres, most people don't stop to think about what makes them work. Today, I'm going to show you why sus chords are the secret ingredient that your music needs, how they work, and how you can use them to keep your songs moving like a perfectly built bridge. Let's start with the basics. What makes sus chords so special, and why are they like bridges? The most common chords, major and minor, are constructed with 3 notes. For this reason, they are called triads. You have the root, the third, and the fifth. The third is the big deal here. It's what decides whether the chord feels happy, major, or sad, minor. For example, C major has the notes C, E, and G, whilst C minor has the notes C, E flat, and G. The flat third note, E flat, is what makes the difference here. But what about sus chords? They're rebels. They throw out the third and replace it with something else, either a second or a fourth. This creates a sound that doesn't quite settle, like it's hanging in mid-air. It's unresolved, just waiting for that moment when everything clicks. As such, they don't have either major or minor qualities. There are 2 main types of sus chords, sus4 and sus2. They're like 2 different kinds of bridges. Both get the job done, but they feel completely different when you're crossing them. Let's start by looking at the sus4 chord. It's built with the 1st, 4th and 5th notes. So C sus4 would have the notes C, F and G. You can see these are the 1st, 4th and 5th notes in the C major scale. Did you hear how this chord feels tense, like it's pulling you forward, urging you to resolve it? This helps to explain one of the main uses that you will see with sus4 chords. They are often paired next to major chords that share the same root. This allows you to spend more time on the chord without it becoming boring, and is a technique you will see used a lot. It generates energy and movement, but all we are doing is changing one note. The third in the major chord moves up to the 4th in the sus4. For example, here's how it sounds moving from C major to C sus4 and then back. I've developed something called the Chord City system, which helps you to visualize chords in a key. I'll link a video at the end of this one which will explain this powerful concept to you. If you think of the C major chord like a house or apartment block in a city, then the related sus4 chord on the same root is like a balcony. We're stepping out of the building to admire the view and feel some movement, but we are still attached and not bridging the gap to another building. In this example, we simply stepped back into the major chord building over and over. Typically, suspended chords were used to delay or suspend a resolution. That means to increase the time before we hear the one tonic chord. For example, a typical major key progression would use the 4 chord and the 5 dominant 7th chord, creating a strong cadence to pull back to the 1 tonic chord for resolution. In the chord city, this would be like walking from the coffee shop to your office or place of work and then back home again. It is logical and predictable. But what if we use the sus4 1 chord after 5 dominant 7th? This is like a suspension bridge from the office to home. It creates surprise and a feeling of incompleteness. We are expecting to go back home straight away, but instead we have this detour. This emptiness we hear is because of using a tonic chord without a third. There's something not quite right about it, and we want to resolve properly. You'll hear this a lot at the end of gospel songs. Here's how this all sounds in the key of C major. You could also delay resolution by using sus4 chords as the 5 chord. As before, this bridge leads back to the chord of the same root. So in our previous example, you could introduce a sus4 suspension bridge between the coffee shop of 4 and the office block of 5. Here's an example of this in the key of C major. These two ways to delay resolution can also be combined, creating chains of suspension bridges that can extend and alter your chord progressions. This is a simple, effective technique that you can use to breathe new life into existing progressions and get more mileage out of them. For example, you could change them like this on later repeats in a song. Here's how this could look in the key of C major. Now let's look at the other type of bridge, which is the sus2 chord. It's built with the first, second and fifth notes. So C sus2 would have the notes C, D and G. You can see these are the first, second and fifth notes in the C major scale. Compared to sus4, sus2 chords feel open and airy, like a bridge where you can stop and admire the view. They are relaxed and wide, making them perfect for creating variety without adding too much tension. You'll hear them a lot in folk and country music, where the soft, nostalgic vibe fits well. The sus2 chord works in a similar way to the sus4 chord. This is why I like to think of both of them like bridges. For example, if you're spending extended time on the one tonic chord, you can use the sus2 to break things up a bit. Here's how that could look in the key of C major. And like the sus4 bridge, you can also use the sus2 to delay or suspend resolution to 1. For example, and it can also be played as the 5 chord to suspend the resolution. Have a listen to this compared to the sus4 version in the key of C major. It's really common to see sus4 and sus2 chords used together in music. Most often you'll see this on the 1 chord, as suggested earlier. Here's how that sounds with the C major chord. You might also see a similar idea with the 5 chord, for example. Ideas like this are really popular on the guitar. They often involve moving a single finger for rapid-fire riff-like changes. You hear this in a lot of indie or jangle rock. It allows you to hang out on a chord for a while and stop things sounding stale. Sus chords are also used in natural minor keys. They serve a similar purpose to those which we saw in major keys. So in the key of A minor, you could use sus2 and sus4 chords on the 1 tonic chord. And you can also use them to delay resolution to the 1 minor tonic. For example, you can also repeat the same idea and suspend the 5 chord in minor keys. While the major 5 chord and the 5 sus2 chords are borrowed from the parallel major key, the 5 sus4 is diatonic to the natural minor key. So far I've always resolved the sus chords to the standard diatonic triad on the same root. But you don't have to build your suspended bridges in this way if you don't want to. You can just use sus chords as neutral substitutes, using them like a standalone chord where you otherwise might use the normal chord. This brings a slightly unsettled calm, as the standard chord isn't heard where you might expect it to be. This allows the feeling of the sus chord to ring out more. For example, listen to this in the key of C major. You could further dilute the strong major sound of the 1-4-5 by playing all of the chords as sus chords, like the following example. Or if you wanted to remove some of the sad edge from a natural minor key progression, you could swap the minor chords for sus chords. Here's an example of this in the key of A minor, which also utilises a second inversion flat 6 chord and a first inversion flat 7 chord for an interesting open sound. Knowing about sus chords is useless if you don't know how to write chord progressions. Learn how to build bridges in the minor key chord city by watching the video on screen now.